Yo, what's going on? It's Dani here from Dynamite Darts and welcome back to today's video. In this video, we are in Dynamite Dart School. I'm going to show you how I went from a 45 average player to someone who now hits 80 and 90 averages in game. Whether you're just starting out in darts or you're looking to take your game to the next level, this video is for you. So first things first, I won't say I consistently hit 80 averages, but I've improved my average by at least 20 to 25 points over the past 2 years. In this video, I'm going to give you my top 5 tips as to how I achieved that and how I can help you along the way. Stuff you probably won't hear from other people. You're going to hear things like, you need to find the darts for you. At the end of the day, you're the person throwing the darts. Yes, there are some darts that will suit you better, but niggling and fixing all of these things, they'll give you momentary lapses of improvement, momentary purple patches. But if you don't sort out the 5 things that I mentioned in this video today, it's very difficult to see progression in the long term, which is ultimately why you're watching this video and what you want at the end of the day, right? Tip number 1, consistency and having a consistent practice routine is key. As darts is a skill, to get better at darts, you need to play more darts. Now, straight away, I will jump in with one caveat to this rule and make a suggestion. Just because you play more darts doesn't always mean you will get better at darts. However, if you are practicing in the correct way, you will get better over time. The great thing about this sport is nothing changes. The distance from the oche, the size of the board, and even the darts you're throwing all stay the same whether you're throwing in the comfort of your own home or in a pub or even on the stage at Ali Pali. The one big difference is mentality, I guess, and also pressure, which we will get to later on in this video. So back to consistency and having a consistent practice plan. Here's what I have done over the past couple of years to be able to help change my consistency in my practice. When I first started off, I would just get up and simply throw at the board, trying to hit treble 20s over and over and over again. This may make you better at getting treble 20s, but as the famous saying in darts goes, trebles for show and doubles for dough. If you cannot finish when you get down to a checkout, hitting as many trebles as you want is kind of pointless. Don't get me wrong, it is always good to improve your scoring, but you need to make sure you're doing different things and not just aiming at the treble 20 all day. Ideally, you want to get into a position where you feel comfortable aiming at any segment in the board, and if someone just randomly kept calling out numbers to you, whether that be double 6, treble 7, whatever it may be, you would feel comfortable with 3 darts in hand that you would either get 1, 2, all 3 maybe, or at least get very close to that target. So the big change I made was simply going from just throwing at the board to having a set practice routine. If you want to know what my practice routine is specifically, I have a video on it here breaking it down in more detail, but to simplify it, I take 30 to 60 minutes and I do a set number of things. I will normally warm up with a few minutes of throwing because the first 5 to 10 minutes, even if you've played darts a long time, you'll feel like you've never thrown a dart before if you just go on your first 5-10 minutes of practice. So to me, I just get those out of the way to get the arm warm. Then I'll go in straight away and do something like Bob's 27 to practice doubles or some checkout and combination finishing like 1-2-1. After that, something like the JDC challenge is fantastic. And it's only then when I feel like I'm warmed up and I've kind of calibrated myself around the board that I'll go into an actual game. This can either be playing an online game, playing against computer, or if I'm actually playing darts outside the house that night, I'll go and play my game then. Remember, consistency is key with this. Aim for 3 to 5 sessions. If you have the time, 30 to 60 minutes every single day. If you can't, just 1 or 2 of those sessions a week is fine. And if you can do more, there's no need to do 2-3 hour marathon dart sessions. Pretty much any game you'll ever play, unless you're playing the World Championship final, will be under 2 hours. So your practice sessions shouldn't really be more than 30 to 45 minutes. You have the time, you can do that more than once a day, but that's what I recommend. Point number 2. Okay, it's great practicing, but you need to actually also improve your technique. So one thing you can do to add on to your consistency is get a consistent stance. That also means when you're throwing at the board, try and throw in the exact same shoes you're going to be actually using when you go and play a game. It's very tempting when you're just at home in the house to throw in your slippers or in your socks, but ultimately you might be adding on an inch to your height and it will feel different when you have shoes on. On top of that, you need to get a very stable base. If you look at the top 32 players in the world, they all do a couple of things very well. They're very stable in their upper body and their lower body, and the only thing that really moves is their arm. So that's what you want to aim for in your technique. There are so many nuances to this, and I have a video going over how I've changed my throw, which has a little bit more detail, which I'll link somewhere on the screen here. But I work directly with a darts coach. You don't have to do that. One of the reasons I did do that was to really see and get down into the nitty gritty of what it means to have a nice throw. All throws are different. The one thing that is consistent with all of them though is most of the time the simpler the better. You just want to get your alignment right, put your dart down the sight of that alignment, wherever it is you're aiming, keep the dart under the line of sight. Once you get back and flick the wrist, it's all in the wrist and the top of your forearm muscles. It is not your arm and your shoulder really throwing it at the board. It is simply a flick of the wrist that allows the dart to project like a projectile or an arrow towards that target. For reference, here's a side-by-side of when I start playing darts to now. Again, this is something that takes time, but there are so many free resources out there. Daniel Poole, who I've worked with straight to the point darts, is fantastic for this, but there's so many other resources online. Wayne Mardle has a masterclass. There are so many different videos and you won't go wrong. I don't want to overcomplicate it. You can't reinvent the wheel. But again, think of it like this. Simple is better. Are you moving a lot when you throw? Do you find it very difficult? Are you standing at different sides of the oki all the time? Pick one, stick with it. You may find that you actually get worse for a while when changing your technique, but that is okay. That is normal. Trust the process and the results will come. Point number 3, you need to develop a strong mental game to play darts. If you've ticked off those things and your technique is fantastic, that can all fall apart when you stand at the oki in front of whether it be 5 people at the pub, 50 people at a local tournament, whatever it may be. The simple way to counteract this is by actually just playing more competitive darts. Make it your mission to go to as many small tournaments that you can. Don't get me wrong, for most people watching this, darts is a hobby. You may not have the time or energy after other commitments to go to tournaments, but just try. If you're going to 1 a month now, go to 2 a month. If you're going to 1 a week, try and go to 2, and so on and so forth. The more time spent playing competitive games, the less nervous you will feel when you get on the oki. Now, nerves are inevitable in darts. You're going to feel nervous because the margin of error is so small. You have this little point that you're trying to get into a few millimeters on the board. That's very difficult to do. Nerves will never completely go away, but simple things like this can help manage it. On top of that, things like exercise, meditation can help. I use cold plunges a lot. I find that really helps to keep me calm. And then when I go to the oki, I take that kind of mental resilience with me. Building on that, you have to learn from your losses. You need to lose a lot of games before you get better at darts. And you need to feel, in a weird way, bad about losing those games. Don't get me wrong, I don't recommend being a sulker or a really bad loser after a game. But what you should do is, it should hurt enough to make you want to make the changes and analyze the differences that you might see in the game. At the same time, some things can just happen. Some days just don't go your way for whatever reason. But if you actually learn from your losses, darts is a game that you can improve very quickly in. And what you'll notice is there will be a turning point when you start to win more games than you lose. This brings me on to point number 4, which is making measurable goals for yourself. If you get to that point where you're now winning more games than you lose, or you're seeing your game improve, that you're beating people that you never used to beat before, you have to constantly challenge yourself. So with that, set goals, whether that be people you know locally, people you play online. Once you get to a point where you feel like you can beat that person, it may seem a bit odd, but think of different tournaments and different people and go in there and think, no, I can now beat this person, even when they play their best darts. And because darts is such a mental game, stuff like this can really help improve your average over time. And it's stuff that's really helped me get, I think, to be quite good in such a short amount of time playing. And finally, this comes back to point number 3. But point number 5 is this. You will always play your best darts if you have a clear mind. Being mentally strong is a fantastic toolkit to have in darts. But you are only as mentally strong on the oki as you are clear-headed going up to the oki. And what I mean by that is, darts is such an odd and interesting game for exposing all areas of your life. If you are not at home and you are settled and you are calm and things are in order, which don't get me wrong, they can't be all the time. But what you'll find is, looking back at it, you play your best darts when you don't care. How often have you played a game and it's like, I didn't even try that game and I played well? That's what happens in darts. That shows you that your technique is there. The one thing that may not be there is extra oki influences or extra ocular influences, if that's even a word. What that means is you almost have to focus on getting your mind right before darts. If there's something you need to do in the house or whatever it is, try and get that done before you leave the door. If that's on your mind, or to be consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously, that will impact your game. So that's probably been the biggest thing for me as well. It's just making sure that I have my dinner ready for tomorrow. I've caught up on all my work, all those simple things. I have my clothes ready for me to get home and get up in the morning. I have my day planned for the next day. I just know that everything else is in order, because if you don't get that in order, there is a limit to what you can throw on the hockey. So there are my 5 biggest points I think that have helped me improve my average over the past 2 years. Nothing's a quick fix. All these things I've mentioned take time, particularly getting your head right. Finding a community can help with that, one that's supportive, whether that be a local team. But at the end of the day, darts is a game that you should enjoy. It can frustrate a lot of us. I've been there. You've probably been there too. And hopefully you're watching this to maybe bring down that level of frustration. But with these 5 tips, you should get to a stage where you're less frustrated at your own game. You play the game you know you can play more often, and you start to win more matches and ultimately become a better player. So if you've enjoyed this video, what I want you to do is leave a comment below. What was your favorite tip, or what's something you do personally that I didn't mention that you'd add on to this? And if you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like. And if you're not subscribed already, be sure to subscribe. So that's been it for today's installment of Dynamite Darts School, how I've improved my average and how you can improve yours too. I appreciate you guys watching, and until next time.